Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into the world of Indian waste management today.
Waste management sounds intriguing.
Right. Might not sound like the most glamorous topic,
Yeah, not exactly a thriller.
but trust me on this, it gets really interesting. We're talking about Antony Waste Handling Cell Limited. They're on the front lines of dealing with India's, well, garbage.
Okay, so what makes them stand out? Is it just the sheer volume of waste they handle?
That's definitely a part of it. I mean, get this. They handle over 6,700 tons of waste every single day. That's like, I don't know, a mountain of garbage.
That's a lot of trash, but it's India, right?
Hmm.
Huge population, rapid development. Waste is a given.
Exactly. And that's what makes Antony Waste so interesting. They're not just collecting it, they're finding innovative ways to deal with it, like their 14 milliW waste-to-energy plant.
Turning trash into treasure, huh? I've heard of this concept, but how effective is it really?
That's the thing, it's not just some pie-in-the-sky idea. It's up and running in Pimpri-Chinchwad. And they're not just using it for themselves, they're selling the power back to the municipality.
Smart. So they're creating a revenue stream
Mhm.
while also providing cleaner energy. Talk about a win-win.
Right. And it kind of makes you think differently about waste. Like, what if it's not just garbage, but a resource we haven't fully tapped into?
Okay, now you've got me thinking. What other innovative solutions are they implementing?
Well, let's talk about their facility in Kanjurmarg. It's massive, one of the largest waste processing plants in all of Asia. And they're doing some amazing things with composting.
Composting. On a massive scale, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
But
They're processing around 1,000 tons of waste every single day using a method called windrow composting, which is basically like large-scale natural decomposition.
turning organic waste into compost, that makes sense. But with that much waste, composting alone can't be enough, right?
You're right. That's why they also have a bioreactor landfill with a capacity of 6,500 tons per day.
Bioreactor landfill. Now that's a new one. What's the difference?
So it's not your typical landfill. They're using a controlled process to speed up the decomposition of organic waste. This helps reduce environmental impact and better control those landfill gas emissions.
Sounds like they're pulling out all the stops to manage this challenge effectively. It makes you wonder, with composting, energy production, and these innovative landfills, is waste disposal even their main source of revenue?
It's a great question, and it gets to how Antony Waste operates. It's not just about waste disposal for them. They've diversified. Think compost sales and something called refuse-derived fuel, or RDF.
RDF. Break that down for me. What is that?
Okay, so picture this. They take the non-biodegradable part of the waste, and they turn it into a fuel source. Industries like cement manufacturing use it as an alternative to traditional fuels.
So they've got their hands in a lot of different cookie jars. It's like they're determined to squeeze every last drop of value out of waste.
Impressive. Exactly. And we haven't even gotten to the technology they're using or their expansion into vehicle scrapping and tire waste recycling. There's so much to uncover.
Well, I am all ears. Let's dive into those details.
We touched on vehicle scrapping and tire waste recycling earlier. It's not every day you hear about turning old cars and tires into a business opportunity.
Right. But that's Antony Waste for you, always innovating.
So let's start with vehicle scrapping. What's the appeal for them? Why this particular area?
Well, think about it. India is growing, more cars on the road, and those cars eventually reach the end of their life.
Makes sense, so there's a growing market for it.
Exactly. And traditionally, vehicle scrapping has been, well, not very environmentally friendly.
I can imagine, not exactly a tightly regulated industry.
Exactly. So Antony Waste saw an opportunity to do what they do best, bring organization and their environmentally conscious approach to an industry that desperately needs it.
So they're aiming to transform it from the ground up.
That's the idea. Moving away from those informal, often hazardous scrapping practices and into a modern, state-of-the-art setup. Safety first, environmental responsibility, always a close second.
So paint me a picture. What does this process actually look like? How do they take a car from, being trashed to being safely dismantled and hopefully reused?
It's quite a process. First things first, they focus on removing and disposing of hazardous materials safely. We're talking batteries, oils, coolants, and the things that can really cause damage if they end up polluting the environment.
Of course, can't be cutting corners with that stuff.
Absolutely not. And from there, it's all about maximizing value.
So recovering those valuable parts that can still be used.
You got it. And for the parts that can't be reused, recycling, metal, glass, rubber, plastics, you name it. anything to minimize what ends up in a landfill.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this is not just good for the planet, but potentially good for business, too.
Exactly. They're tapping into a growing market while also promoting a more sustainable, circular system for managing these end-of-life vehicles.
Speaking of sustainability, let's talk about tire waste. We all know those things are notoriously difficult to get rid of.
You're telling me they pile up, take up space, don't break down easily? A real headache for landfills.
So how is Antony Waste tackling this particular waste stream?
Tire waste recycling. They see those piles of old tires and see a resource.
Turning trash into treasure again.
You know it. They utilize this process where they shred the tires into something called crumb rubber.
Crumb rubber. Okay, I'm intrigued. What do they do with that?
Oh, it has all sorts of uses. Playgrounds, athletic tracks,
Wow.
even as an additive in asphalt.
Wow. Okay, that's actually really cool. They're literally paving the way for a greener future. We talked earlier about their use of technology, particularly with GPS tracking in their fleet.
Right, we touched on it briefly.
I'm curious to dive a bit deeper. How does that technology translate into real benefits, both for Antony Waste and the people they serve?
Think of it this way. Imagine you're planning a road trip. You'd use GPS to find the most efficient route, right?
Of course, gotta save time and gas.
Exactly. That's essentially what Antony Waste is doing, but with their entire fleet. The GPS tracking lets them monitor their vehicles, make sure they're taking the most efficient routes, which minimizes fuel consumption, reduces their environmental impact, and saves them money in the process.
So it's a win-win for the company and the planet.
Precisely. And let's not forget, it allows them to provide better service. Real-time tracking means if there's a delay or an issue, they can address it immediately, ensuring waste collection is on time and their operations run smoothly.
It's like they've brought this whole new level of sophistication to an industry that's not exactly known for being high-tech. And speaking of high-tech, we have to talk about their 7 MW landfill gas-to-energy plant at Conjumarg.
Landfill gas to energy. There's another mouthful. Tell me more. What is that exactly?
Right. It's not the most glamorous sounding thing, but it's another example of how they're turning a potential problem into a solution. Landfill gas is essentially a byproduct of all that organic waste decomposing in landfills.
It's like nature's way of trying to break all that stuff down.
Exactly. And as it decomposes, it releases a mix of gases, mainly methane and carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases.
Ah, I see where this is going. Not great for the environment if those gases just escape.
You got it. But instead of letting those harmful gases escape into the atmosphere, Antony Waste is capturing them and using them to generate clean energy to power their facility.
Talk about turning a problem into a resource.
Right. It's reducing their reliance on the grid, lowering their carbon footprint. It's a key part of their commitment to that circular economy model we were talking about.
It all sounds great so far, but let's talk about the financial side of things. All this innovation technology, the commitment to sustainability, it has to come at a cost. So how are they managing financially? Are these ventures profitable?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's one thing to have big ideas. It's another to make them work financially.
Absolutely. And this is where Antony Waste really stands out. They've figured out how to make doing good for the planet also good for business.
So how are they making it work financially? What's their secret sauce?
It's not really a secret. They're incredibly strategic with their investments. They analyze the market, they figure out where the high growth potential is, and then they focus their resources on those areas.
So finding those sweet spots where sustainability and profitability overlap.
Exactly. And it's paying off. They've seen steady growth in their revenue and EBITDA, even with the investments they've made in things like that waste energy plant.
But didn't we say that plant came with higher interest and depreciation costs? How are they managing those costs and staying profitable?
They're smart about managing their debt, and they've diversified their revenue streams.
So spreading the risk.
You got it. They have a good leverage ratio, meaning they're not overly reliant on debt financing, which gives them flexibility and stability.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you say diversifying the revenue streams, is that where vehicle scrapping and tire waste recycling come into play?
Exactly. Those new ventures provide additional income that's not directly tied to their core waste disposal business.
It's like a safety net. Even if one area experiences a downturn, they have these other ventures to help balance things out.
Right. It shows they're thinking long-term, focusing on sustainable growth, and not just chasing short-term profits. And it's not just about the bottom line either. They're really committed to their employees, especially those swatched warriors. But maybe we should take a pause there and come back to that.
You were saying something about their Swashta Warriors before. It's a pretty powerful name, and they really are on the front lines of this whole operation.
Right. Unsung heroes, you could say.
Yeah.
It's tough work and not always the most pleasant. But Antony Waste seems to get that their workforce is key. They've got some interesting programs in place.
So it's not just about handing someone a broom and saying, get to work. There's more to it than that.
That's right. They've actually got pretty extensive training programs for everyone, not just the Swatch Warriors, but they have specific tracks for them. Covers everything from waste segregation and operating the vehicles to, basic hygiene and safety protocols.
I imagine that's crucial, especially in this line of work. You don't want to be cutting corners when it comes to safety and hygiene.
Exactly. And they're also really focused on building a diverse workforce. They've made a real push to get more women and underrepresented groups into their teams.
Always good to hear that. It's one thing to talk the talk, but they're walking the walk when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
And it makes sense, right? It not only does the right thing, but also helps build a stronger, more resilient team in the long run. Having that diversity of thought and experience can only be a good thing as they face new challenges.
Makes you wonder, though, what are some of the biggest challenges for a company like this? The waste management industry is huge, complex.
Oh yeah, they've definitely got hurdles to overcome. One of the biggest, I think, is just the sheer variety of waste they have to deal with now. It's not just your average household garbage anymore.
Right, so much more to consider now. Electronic waste, all the different types of plastics. It must be a logistical nightmare.
It is. And then you've got hazardous materials to think about. It all needs to be handled responsibly, and the regulations are always changing.
So how is Antony Waste keeping up with all of that?
They're investing a lot in research and development. They have to stay ahead of the curve. And they're not afraid to partner with other companies, organizations that are tackling specific problems like plastic recycling or e-waste.
Collaboration is key. No one company can solve it all.
Exactly. They seem to understand that, which is a good sign. They're not afraid to seek out expertise, and they're willing to work with others who share their vision for a more sustainable future.
So for our listeners, for anyone out there thinking, this Antony Waste company sounds interesting, but what does it all mean for me? What's the key takeaway?
It's easy to forget about waste management, right?
Mhm.
It's like this thing that just happens in the background, out of sight, out of mind. But the reality is, it affects all of us. It impacts our environment, our health, even our economy.
It's bigger than just taking out the trash, right?
Way bigger. What Antony Waste is showing us is that we can do better. We don't have to see waste as just a problem. It can be a resource.
It all comes down to finding smart, sustainable ways to manage it.
And that's what they're doing. They're innovating, they're using technology to their advantage, and they're proving that a company can be profitable while also being responsible.
They're leading by example, hoping others will follow suit.
Well, that was fascinating. I learned a lot about a company I honestly didn't know much about before. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Antony Waste Handling Cell Limited. We'll see you next time.